Life is strangely full of decisions, endless, constant, relentless decisions. We spend an enormous amount of time making decisions, don't we? What to eat, what to wear, where to go, what to say. But how often do we actually make the decision that matters most? The decision to simply be ourselves. Not the person your parents wanted, not the person society expects, not even the person you think you should be. Just you. Plain and simple you. And here's the funny thing. Now, the moment you actually make that decision, the moment you truly choose yourself, not out of arrogance or selfishness, but out of a deep recognition of who you actually are, everything begins to change. Not because you're doing something special, but because you've stopped doing something very unspecial. You stop pretending. So let me ask you this. When was the last time you looked at your life and honestly asked yourself, am I living this for me, or am I living it for them? For the invisible audience in your head that's always watching, always judging, always keeping score. Most of us never even think to ask that question because we're too busy performing, too busy trying to get it right, to make it work, to prove something to someone we'll probably never even meet. But what happens when you stop? What happens when you finally choose yourself? Well, let me tell you, it's not what you think. You see, we've been taught that choosing yourself is selfish, that it means abandoning others, ignoring responsibilities, running away to some island where you can sit under a palm tree and forget about the world. But that's not it at all. Choosing yourself is not about rejecting life. It's about accepting it. It's about recognizing that you are not a stranger in the universe, but a part of it. And the moment you accept that, the moment you stop fighting against your own nature, something extraordinary happens. You relax. Now, most people don't know how to relax. They think relaxation means lying on a couch doing nothing. But real relaxation, the kind that changes your life, is not about doing nothing. It's about doing what you do without resistance, without the constant voice in your head saying, am I doing this right? What will they think? Is this good enough? When you choose yourself, that voice starts to quiet down. Not because you've defeated it or suppressed it, but because you've stopped taking it so seriously. You've realized that the voice was never yours to begin with. It was just an echo of all the people who told you who you should be. Your parents, your teachers, your friends, your culture. They all meant well, of course, but they were trying to turn you into something that fit their picture, their plan, their idea of what a good life looks like. And the problem is, their picture was never meant for you. Think about it. Have you ever tried to force yourself into clothes that don't fit? It's uncomfortable, isn't it? You can't move properly. You can't breathe. You spend the whole time adjusting, pulling, trying to make it work. That's what most people do with their entire lives. They're walking around in clothes that don't fit, pretending they're comfortable, wondering why they feel so exhausted all the time. Choosing yourself is like taking off those clothes and putting on something that actually fits. And the moment you do, you realize how much energy you've been wasting. All that effort you put into being someone else, into maintaining an image, into proving your worth, it just falls away. And what's left is this simple, easy presence, this sense of being at home in your own skin. But here's where it gets interesting. When you finally choose yourself, when you stop trying to be what others want and start being what you are, people notice. Some of them won't like it. In fact, some of them will be deeply threatened by it, because your authenticity reminds them of their own pretending. Your freedom highlights their prison, and that makes them uncomfortable. So they'll try to pull you back. They'll question your choices. They'll tell you you've changed. They'll say you're being selfish, irresponsible, foolish. And if you're not careful, you'll believe them. You'll think maybe they're right. That maybe I should go back to the way things were. At least it was safe. At least people understood. But you can't go back. Once you've tasted real freedom, once you've felt what it's like to live from your own center instead of from someone else's expectations, you can't unknow that. It's like waking up from a dream. You might remember the dream, but you know it wasn't real. And this is what people don't understand about choosing yourself. It's not a one-time decision. It's a daily practice. Every morning you wake up and you have to make the choice again. Am I going to live for myself today, or am I going to live for them? Am I going to honor what I know to be true, or am I going to pretend? Most days it's easy. You wake up, you feel clear. You know what you need to do. But some days it's hard. Some days the old patterns come rushing back. The need for approval, the fear of rejection, the desperate desire to fit in. And on those days, you have to be gentle with yourself. You have to remember that choosing yourself is not about being perfect. It's about being honest. Now let me tell you something that might surprise you. When you choose yourself, when you really commit to it, you don't become more isolated, you become more connected. Because authentic connection can only happen between authentic people. When you're pretending, you can only connect with other people's pretending. It's like two masks talking to each other. Because you're you. Because in your being, I recognize my own being. This is what the mystics have always known. We are not separate. We only think we are. And the moment you choose yourself, you begin to see through that illusion. You begin to recognize that the self you're choosing is not this small separate ego. It's something much larger. It's the life itself expressing through this particular form, this particular body, this particular moment. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're a wave in the ocean. For years you've believed you're just this one little wave, separate from all the other waves, trying to survive, trying to be bigger, trying to last longer. But then one day you realize you're not just a wave. You're the ocean. You've always been the ocean. The wave is just a temporary form, a pattern, a dance that the ocean is doing. When you see this, everything changes. You're no longer afraid of crashing on the shore because you know you're not going to disappear. You're just going to return to what you've always been. And suddenly being a wave becomes fun. It's play. It's the ocean enjoying itself, expressing itself, celebrating itself. That's what happens when you choose yourself. You realize you're not this small, frightened thing that needs to protect itself from the world. You're the world. Your life itself. And when you see that, the whole game changes. You're no longer playing to win, you're playing to play. But most people never get there because they're too afraid to choose themselves. They're too afraid of what might happen if they stop pretending. What if I lose my job? What if my family rejects me? What if I fail? What if I'm alone? These are real fears. I'm not saying they're not. But here's the thing. The life you're living right now, the one where you're not choosing yourself, where you're constantly trying to please others, to meet expectations, to prove your worth, is that really living, or is it just a slow death? Because when you don't choose yourself, you die a little bit every day. Every time you say yes when you mean no. Every time you smile when you want to scream. Every time you pretend to be happy when you're actually miserable. You're killing something inside yourself. Something precious. Something irreplaceable. Your authenticity. And without authenticity, life loses its flavor. Everything becomes gray, mechanical, automatic. You wake up. You go through the motions. You do what's expected. And then you go to sleep. And the next day, you do it all over again. Is that what you came here for? To be a machine? To be a good little robot that does what it's told? I don't think so. I think you came here to be alive, to feel deeply, to love completely, to experience the full range of what it means to be human. And you can't do that if you're not being yourself. You can't do that if you're hiding behind a mask, playing a role, following a script that someone else wrote for you. So what happens? When you finally choose yourself, you wake up. Not gradually, not politely the year, but suddenly, violently, completely, like someone throwing open the curtains in a dark room and letting the sunlight pour in. Everything you thought was solid starts to dissolve. Everything you thought was important starts to seem trivial. And everything you ignored, everything you pushed aside because it didn't fit the plan, that starts to become clear. You begin to see your life as it actually is, not as you've been telling yourself it is. This is not as others have told you it should be, but as it actually is. Right here, right now, in this moment. And maybe you realize you're in the wrong job. Maybe you see that your relationship isn't working. Maybe you understand that the life you've built is not the life you want. And that's terrifying, because now you have to make choices, real choices, not the safe choices, not the comfortable choices, but the choices that honor who you actually are. This is where most people turn back. They get to this point and they say, no, this is too much. I can't do this. It's easier to go back to sleep, easier to pretend everything is fine, easier to keep the mask on. But you can't, not really. Once you've seen the truth, you can't unsee it. Once you've felt what it's like to be yourself, you can't go back to being someone else. The door has been opened. And even if you try to close it, there will always be a crack, a sliver of light reminding you of what you've lost. So you have a choice. You can stay where you are, in the comfortable discomfort of a life that's not yours. Or you can step through the door. You can choose yourself, fully, completely, without apology. And when you do, something miraculous happens. The fear doesn't go away. The uncertainty doesn't disappear. The challenges don't magically resolve themselves. But you change. You become present. You become real. You become alive in a way you've never been before. Because you're no longer divided. You're no longer at war with yourself. There's no longer a part of you that wants one thing and another part that wants something else. You're whole, integrated, complete. And from that wholeness, everything flows. Your work becomes effortless because you're no longer forcing yourself to do things you hate. Your relationships become genuine because you're no longer pretending to be someone you're not. Your life becomes meaningful because you're finally living it according to your own values, your own truth, your own heart. This is not easy. Let me be clear about that. Choosing yourself is perhaps the hardest thing you will ever do, because it means letting go of everything you've been taught, everything you've believed, everything you've built your identity around. It means facing your shadows. Those parts of yourself you've been trying to hide, to suppress, to deny. The anger you've never expressed, the sadness you've never allowed yourself to feel, the desires you've never permitted yourself to acknowledge. All of that has to come out, has to be seen, has to be integrated. And this process is messy. It's uncomfortable, it's painful. There'll be moments when you question everything, when you wonder if you're making a terrible mistake, when you long for the simplicity of your old life, even though it was killing you. But you keep going. You keep choosing yourself, day after day, moment after moment. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. And slowly, something begins to shift. The resistance starts to ease. The fear starts to loosen its grip. And you begin to discover something you never knew was there. Peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from controlling everything, from having it all figured out, from making sure nothing bad ever happens. But the kind of peace that comes from accepting what is, from trusting life, from knowing that whatever happens, you'll be okay because you're no longer pretending to be something you're not. This peace is not fragile. It doesn't depend on circumstances. It doesn't require that everything go your way. It's there in the good times and the bad times. It's there in success and in failure. It's there when people love you and when they leave you, because it comes from within. It comes from that place inside you that has always been there, waiting for you to notice it. That silent center, that still point, that awareness that watches everything but is touched by nothing. When you choose yourself, you discover this center. And once you find it, you realize it's the only thing that matters. Everything else, all the external things you've been chasing, all the goals you've been pursuing, all the approval you've been seeking, they're fine, they're nice to have, but they're not necessary. Because you already have what you need. You already are what you're looking for. And this changes everything. Your relationships change. Not because you leave everyone behind, but because you show up differently. You're no longer desperate for approval. You're no longer willing to compromise your truth to keep the peace. You're no longer afraid of being alone. And paradoxically, this makes you much better company. Because you're not needy. You're not clingy. You're not constantly looking for validation. You're just there, present, real, yourself. And the right people, the ones who resonate with your energy, with your truth, with your authenticity, they appear, not because you're looking for them, but because like attracts like. When you're being yourself, you naturally attract others who are being themselves. And these connections, these relationships, they're different. They're deeper. They're more satisfying because they're based on truth, not on pretending, not on playing roles, not on meeting expectations, just two people being real with each other, being human together. Your work changes too, not necessarily what you do, but how you do it. When you're choosing yourself, you can no longer tolerate work that violates your values, that drains your energy, that makes you feel dead inside. You begin to look for work that aligns with who you are. Work that beter is on Rocketdale. Dat is something a mens dreamt niet zijn en long his stirrups. Pretending me now then upright here, remember. Not because you're trying to be, but because that's what happens when life flows through you without obstruction. Even your body changes. The tension you've been carrying for years starts to release. The headaches, the stomach problems, the chronic pain. Much of it was your body's way of telling you something was wrong, that you were living out of alignment, that you needed to choose yourself. And when you finally do, the body relaxes, it heals, because it's no longer at war with itself. It's no longer trying to be something it's not. So here we are. I've told you what happens when you choose yourself. The fear, the resistance, the transformation. The peace, the authenticity, the freedom. But now comes the real question. Will you do it? Will you make the choice? Will you commit to living from your truth even when it's hard? Even when it's scary? Even when everyone around you is telling you you're wrong? Or will you keep pretending? Will you keep wearing the mask? Will you keep living the life that everyone else thinks you should live? The choice is yours. It has always been yours, and it will always be yours. But I can tell you this, life is short, shorter than you think. And every moment you spend not being yourself is a moment lost forever. You can't get it back. You can't redo it. It's gone. So why waste it? Why spend your precious time on this earth trying to be someone you're not? Why give your life away to meet expectations that were never yours in the first place? Choose yourself. Not tomorrow, not when things are more settled, not when you have more courage. Now. Right now. In this moment. Choose yourself and see what happens. I promise you, it will be worth it.